Let's talk about cultural stereotypes and cultural paradox. On the late evening of February 3rd, 1999, Amadou Diallo, an immigrant from West Africa, was shot in front of his apartment building in New York City by 4 undercover police officers who mistook him for a wanted criminal. When they searched his body, he was unarmed. Since then, many more similar cases have made headlines. The key question that these cases raise is, would the officers have acted any differently if these men and women were white? In psychology research, the Amadou Diallo case has been used to highlight the dangers of automatic thinking and how cultural stereotypes can influence our reactions when we are not paying attention. Cultural stereotypes are beliefs and perceptions that people have about the characteristics, attributes, and behaviors of members of certain groups. We can divide cultural stereotypes into 2 groups: conventional stereotypes and sophisticated stereotypes. Conventional stereotypes come from irrational dislikes and hearsay about members of other groups. Sophisticated stereotypes are based on research and population average, and they are commonly learned in courses like cultural intelligence. Stereotypes fall under the broader umbrella of racial biases that also include prejudice, negative emotions of dislike, disgust, fear, anger toward another person, and discrimination, negative behaviors associated with rejecting, avoiding, and engaging in acts of violence. These biases are learned through our upbringing, and everyone holds certain biases even if we are not aware. To learn about your own biases, you can take the implicit association test that measures how fast you associate people of certain race with positive and negative words in order to determine how biased you are. The stereotypes that we hold about people from other cultures influence how we think and perceive them, especially when we have to work with them in multicultural teams. Think for a moment. How would you rate someone if they were not as fluent in English? In a study of multicultural teamwork, people associated language fluency and speaking up with general competence. In other words, we hold stereotypes that those who speak more during group discussions and those who are more fluent in English are generally more capable and competent. In another study, negotiators were more likely to give in to an angry East Asian than to an angry white American. This is due to the common stereotype that East Asians do not show their emotions. Therefore, they must be very mad to display anger, and this creates fear in the other negotiator. Despite these negative effects, stereotypes also serve important social roles. They increase our sense of connection with our social group. When we share stereotypes with others, we feel more similar to them and we like them more. This is why people like to bond over racial jokes. It feels good to laugh about something that we all get, even if it's hurtful or inappropriate. Cultural stereotypes also help reduce uncertainty. When we meet people from other cultures for the first time, cultural stereotypes feel like a good source of information to know what to expect and how to explain other people's behavior. It's okay to use stereotypes as first best guess when we don't know anything about another culture, as long as your stereotypes are descriptive and neutral. But be prepared to revise your stereotypes when people do not behave accordingly. As you interact with more and more people from other cultures, you will encounter situations that challenge your stereotypes. This is called cultural paradox, a situation where people from other cultures behave differently from the stereotypes that we have of them. When I moved to China from France, I had the stereotype that Chinese people follow rules strictly and are very orderly. I imagined that queuing in China would look like this. And it did sometimes. But many other times, it looked more like that. This is a cultural paradox. There are 6 possible reasons why cultural paradox happen. Confusion of level of analysis, unresolved cultural issues, bipolar patterns of value, role differences, espoused versus actual values, and value trumping. Confusions of levels of analysis happen when we assume that everyone in a culture follows the country values in the exact same way. In reality, people embrace values to varying degrees. It's the average of all the individuals in a culture that determine the values of a country. Unresolved cultural issues refer to situations where the culture have not agreed on a collective response to a specific issue. For example, in America, abortion is a divisive question, with some states that are pro-life and others that are pro-choice. Bipolar patterns of values is a type of cultural paradox when people only consider cultural values as extremes. In reality, values are a continuum and people can range from very high to very low and all shades in between. Role difference refers to situations where people are allowed and even expected to depart from their cultural behaviors because of the position that they're in. For example, in egalitarian cultures, it's acceptable for a CEO to behave in authoritarian ways, even if it conflicts with the broader culture. Real versus espoused values happen when people say they embrace a particular value but act differently. This is because the values that we see as ideal are not always convenient or practical to follow. Value trumping happens when a cultural group embraces multiple values that are not always compatible. For example, in cultures that value collectivism and achievement orientation may trump collectivism in academic settings where performance is measured individually and one needs to succeed. In reality, culture is only one reason why people behave the way they do. In fact, people's behaviors are almost always the result of a combination of factors that include their personal characteristics and the environment in which the behavior occurs. When working with people from other cultures, being culturally intelligent implies that we look beyond our stereotypes and biases and that we also consider the person and the situation they are in, so that we can understand the person fully.